Yeah, so this is also an unusual service, somewhat unusual for us. About every couple of months, I like to do what I call conversations with Todd. It's not really a conversation, it's sort of a question-response period. But for those who may recall, there was a popular book series some years ago called Conversations with God, so I thought it'd be funny to have one called Conversations with Todd. Not that I'm getting the two confused, not that I, believe in one of them anyway, but I won't tell you which one. So it's just a time really to ask a question maybe about something I've said or something I've not said that you've been curious about. And of course, as our guest, you're welcome to. In fact, if you don't, maybe nobody will, because we're a pretty small audience here today. So yeah, I would open it up. I did get one question from someone over email I may get to if I don't get much from those of you who are here, but feel free to. Yes, Alan. By the way, I'll repeat the questions for those of you who are live streaming so you get it. Yeah. Oh, John Dietrich, yeah. So Alan's bringing up the series I'm doing on John Dietrich, who was the father of religious humanism and went on to, a signer of the Humanist Manifesto and was really an incredible luminary and voice of liberalism in the 20th century that most people have forgotten. He was the minister of this church in 1916 to 1911, something like that. Anyway, that can't be right. 1911, backwards, right? 1911. I should know because of the 100-year thing. So that's what I did in my head real quickly. Yeah, 1911 to 1916, and he became a humanist here. This was an incredibly liberal congregation. It was founded in 1887. And in 1888, it established its bylaws, which stated, and I paraphrase, that our purpose is to establish our purpose is to crush superstition and establish the facts of religion, and that our authority shall be science and reason, and there shall be no censure for heresy. So Dietrich, who was booted out of the Dutch Reformed Church as a heretic, the only minister ever to be excommunicated from the Dutch Reformed Church as a heretic, immediately came here. They said, there's a heretic, let's grab him up. And so, anyway, I've become a real fan of his and been studying his sermons, and I deliver some of those on occasion, rework them a little bit, but an incredibly present figure. Yeah, and Robert Ingersoll, another person who had influenced Unitarianism quite a bit. There's a lot of great figures out there. I can only, really be an expert on so many. No, I'm not even an expert, but I mean, at least somebody inspired by many. So, I tend to stick to those that I'm really attracted to. So John Dietrich is one. Erich Fromm often comes up in my sermons as well. So I try to talk about what I know about and don't have to do a lot of extra research outside of the research I'm continually doing in those areas I think edify my own life. So as I said a couple of weeks ago, my sermons are really always preaching to the preacher, right? It's about my process and what I'm working with and giving myself a chance to put those concepts into some sort of order and then share those with others who might be interested. So, yes, Stephanie.
So you talk sometimes about the singularity.
Talk about the singularity.
Which, correct me if this is wrong, but the idea that we will kind of merge with technology
Mm-hmm.
as species evolve.
Yes.
What is the role, how will the role of the natural world change? Like the shaping of our consciousness as we move towards the singularity?
Okay, so the question is about the technological singularity that I believe, like many, is coming our way. And what will come of
How will the natural world,
humanity in the natural world?
yes, how will the role of the natural
Yeah.
world change?
How will it change? What might be? Okay, so good. So yeah, so the technological singularity, just to be clear, refers to a time in the future where technology is advancing so rapidly that we cannot predict what's going to happen after that point. Okay, so a singularity is like a black hole. You can't get information out of it. All right, everything's getting sucked in, so we can't see what's beyond the black hole, right, or the event horizon. So that's why it's called a singularity. It is believed that it will begin with the merging of humanity with its technology. Now that's very scary to most people. Some would say we've already been merging and have merged with our technology. At least it keeps getting closer, right? From distant giant rooms in a government warehouse somewhere to a few college campuses, to our desktops, to our laptops, to our pockets, to now with the BCI, brain-computer interface. So we tend to merge with them rather naturally and organically and don't really notice that we've merged with them and that they've changed how we do things outside of major shifts, sudden shifts that we say, oh, something's wrong with our kids. They're suddenly looking down and they're not engaging their mirror neurons and those sort of things, right? So the technological singularity is, yes, a time when we will merge with our machines, probably largely merge with the artificial intelligence that is coming online, and I'm guessing quantum computing in the next, maybe by the end of this decade, which will dramatically change intelligence. It'll make, as Michio Kaku says, it'll make artificial intelligence today look like the abacus. So imagine that kind of shift in just a few years, right? And what that means for us. So we don't know. We can't imagine really what it's going to be like. My belief is that in the next few years, these technologies will enable us to correct much of the damage we've done to the planet. I know there's people out there listening that are maybe fuming right now, but that's what I see. That's what I see happening, because we'll discover things about material sciences that we just haven't thought of at this point. Be able to harness clean energy and green energy and make reparations that we're currently unable to make. Although we even see now that there are companies that are bringing back extinct animals that humans have wiped out, helping animals that are on the brink to survive, even bringing back the American chestnut. That's already happening as well. They're being planted right now. So and I think the thing that we miss, that all of us miss, and this gets to kind of the question that was asked of me via email this morning about my reasons for optimism. And I don't choose to be optimistic. I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic because I have reasons to be optimistic. At least I think they're good reasons. I'm optimistic, one, because I understand the human condition. Okay, and our natural neurological and psychological disposition is to be afraid of the future. I mean, we're in we're still in human point one, right? 1.0. So we have bodies of creatures that had to fear being the victims of predation from other animals. If you look at most other animals that are bipedal, They only use their bipedal abilities when they're looking out for danger. Then they crouch back down and move forward slowly. Then they get back up. Look again. You ever see the meerkats, right? You know, so, and even a rattlesnake, when endangered, becomes as erect as it possibly can. So we are what fear looks like in nature, right? We don't have much of a peripheral vision compared to other animals. We're always looking straight ahead. We're standing up straight. We have very, very little that can protect us against the dangers, right? We're rather awkward. We're unstable compared to other animals. We don't have claws. We don't have fangs. And so we're in this body that is overly fearful. In fact, fear is not really an emotion in us. It is a neurological structure, right? We have the amygdala that's wired to the hippocampus, the sort of emotional center of the brain, and those amygdala are there to keep us vigilant, to keep us fearful of what's ahead. And if we're hypervigilant and never come down from that anxiety, because we're always on alert, then that causes all sorts of problems. So that gets to the point of being neurologically wired for fear, having a psychological disposition for fear. And there's reasons to be afraid. Not as many as there used to be. But it's kind of like being a television set with one channel, right? There's all this information represented as static in the world. And if we can move the dial, we can hone in on different channels. But if we're wired to hone in on just one channel, then for us, reality is a fearful one, including the future. We're afraid. So that's our disposition. And in recognizing this, I choose to overcome it, to do my best to overcome that instinct in me and see, well, what else is out there? What other channels are there? Because they're there. It's not that we can't see them. We just have to learn to adjust the dial. And there are all sorts of people out there who have been using real data to talk about many of the problems, some of our worst problems have been reduced in the world. You know, around women education, democracy, women's rights, health, child mortality, even population is coming down in the world. So there's so many good things to celebrate. The environment certainly is a major concern, but you know, just this week there was news that there's been greater investment in renewable energies in the United States this year than ever before, despite what's going on in Washington right now. Right there. So the question I always like to ask is, you know, there are some sinister people in the world, right? How many of you personally know somebody who you would consider a sinister person? You know, so we got one person who knows somebody who's sinister, and I don't doubt that. You know somebody who's sinister. You know somebody who's sinister, okay? Do you know a lot of people who are sinister?
I know of them.
Not of them, but them.
I'm not a rich person, and I'm not in positions of power for the government, so
Okay,
I think
all right.
that increases the more you get.
Okay, so you're not a rich person. You think people who have power and wealth are more sinister than more power than wealth are more sinister. Okay. So the reason I bring this up is because I don't know many people who are sinister. I know of some people I would consider sinister. I'm not going to name the name. But no, I'm serious. If somebody is a malignant narcissist, you know, sadly that is a condition, but it really causes them to do pure evil. But those people are few and far between. You know, the people who get up in the morning and say, "Who can I hurt today?" are very few and far between. Most of us don't know them. And I ask this everywhere I go. Most of us don't have these people in our circles. And as you begin to, you know, read the biographies and look at the work of even some people in power, people who have wealth. They are not people who are sinister. They are not people that are totally greedy, totally in it for themselves. In fact, many of them have gotten into the positions they've gotten into by trying to solve problems, by trying to solve some of our greatest challenges. So that's one of the, I think, the delusions, right? This idea that these sinister others are out there controlling everything. I just don't happen to have them in my circle. But pretty much everyone else can't be trusted, right? That there's an evil in humanity. And I just happen to get lucky to where they're not around me very much. No, they're not around most of us very much because they're not around that much. So I have a positive view of humanity as well, and of at least the intention of most of us to be good people. So I consider that essential to the question of what is going to be beyond that point. What is going to be beyond the singularity? I think as we move towards it, we're going to improve the environment. We're going to heal the environment, just as we learn better ways of healing ourselves from some of these terrible diseases like leukemia and other forms of cancer that we heard about today, Alzheimer's disease, these sort of things. I think we're going to see that in the coming months and years, not in the coming decades, right? The singularity is predicted to be here by 2045. I think that date just got moved up to 2040. So we're looking at a period of exponential change between now and then. Now, having said that, not to do shameful self-promotion, but I've played with this question a lot lately, and it has resulted in an album I used AI to generate called 2045. That's the title of it. It's got 21 tracks on it. You can listen to it on any music venue that you normally listen to. Just look up the band Blue Green Hum, all one word. Blue Green Hum, right? Like the colors of the earth and the hum of electricity and the hum of harmony. Blue Green Hum. And it is one of 7 albums I have. It's called 2045. And that really plays with the question you're asking, imagining what's going to become of us? What will we be when this transition takes place? So it's not a great answer because beyond the singularity, I can't tell you, but I'm very positive and hopeful that things are going to improve. I'll be doing a sermon later this month based on a book I read called The Storm Before the Calm by a social scientist that predicts that what we're seeing, and actually predicted what we're seeing right now in the 2020s back in the 20-teens, to the point that is, scarily accurate. But also talks about what's going to happen in 2028, and that this is going to move us into a new era of prosperity, unlike something we've seen in many decades. So that's another book recommendation for you. The Storm Before the Calm. Yeah. Okay, yes. Let me see if there's anyone else in the room first. Yes, please.
Todd, how would you explain humanism and what role it plays in the UU Church?
Wow, thank you. How would I explain humanism and what role does it play in the UU Church? Great question, especially for me. Humanism, I would say in short, is the belief in human agency and human goodness. Okay, that we're not born in sin, we're not born evil, there's not something fundamentally flawed about us. That gets back into that neurology, right? That we can't trust one another. But that fundamentally, as Socrates said, nobody knowingly does evil, right? We're fundamentally good. And we have agency, that we can decide how to make the world a better place. And we can actually pull it off, right? So you believe You can trust human goodness and that humans can actually do something to make the world better. That, I think, is the fundamental precepts. That goes back to the pre-Socratic philosophers, who were the first we know of to try to explain reality, the world, in natural rather than supernatural terms. And in order to do that, they began talking about what physically do we see. That's where the first principles thinking came in, right? What are the first basic principles? What do we know might exist? And boy, they discovered just about everything our scientists today discovered, only they got shut down really early on, right before the Dark Ages, and that stuff had to come back to us later on. But the Renaissance was a recognition of the pre-Socratics, and then the really remembering their ideas, rediscovering their ideas. That's what the renewal or the rediscovery means. And then those ideas began to flourish during the Enlightenment, and during which formal humanism was born, or really towards the tail end of that. The early 20th century is when John Dietrich and others formulated what we generally think of as humanism, with a capital H, right, that was outlined in the Humanist Manifesto. But it was really the Renaissance where humanism, with a small h, was formed. They called it the Studia Humanitatis, the study of all of humanity, right? So they're coming out of an era where you were only allowed to study one thing, and anybody who disagreed would be silenced or put down or whatever the problem is. That's where all those religious wars came from. But as soon as people said, let's start tolerating one another because there's been too much brutality, too much bloodshed, we're not getting anywhere, we've got to try something new, they said they just started to discover all of these writings that had been, at least those that were left. I mean, 90% of the writings of antiquity were destroyed, right? But those that were left, they began to say, wow, there's lots of information, lots of knowledge here that we should be looking at. So it was a respect for the girth of human understanding, wherever it's from, whoever it's from, whatever culture it's from, that sort of thing. But fundamentally, that resulted in the ethical position of, so Immanuel Kant was the first to give us the categorical imperative that no person should be used as a means to somebody else's ends, but should be an end within themselves. That migrated during the French Revolution to what we know as today as the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And then it migrated later to the humanistic ethic, which is that everything we do should be for the benefit of human welfare and individual unfolding, which, by the way, is not anthropocentric. It means, because to be a healthy human, as Maslow said, there's a pyramid. The bottom part of that pyramid has to do with the general welfare of humanity, meaning that we want to have systems in place so that people are not starving, they have shelter, they have education, they have rights, they're treated fairly under, all of those sort of things. And the upper half is for us as individuals, the unfolding of every individual. So that's the humanistic ethic, as Eric Fromm says, that we want to look out for the general welfare of humanity and create a space where people can fully unfold or fully develop their natural abilities. So to answer the first part of the question, what does this have to do with Unitarianism? If you think about the term Unitarianism, which was really the original belief that Jesus was but a man. Jesus was a human being, and it was his humanitarian teachings that we ought to follow. And it wasn't until Christianity was Romanized 300 years after his death that this idea that he was himself a god came into being, and then that, in order to thwart or silence the original thinking that in Jesus' humanity, the invention of the Trinity was born in that 4th century. So the Unitarianism has been around a very long time, and being born of Judaism, it of course was something that did not believe that a person was God, but that this person had teachings that could save our community and our lives and our way of living. And so Unitarianism, if you will, is synonymous with what we call a humanistic Christology. right from the beginning. There was humanism in it. And so it was only natural that humanism would be born of Unitarianism and remain a large part of Unitarianism ever since. I mean, sadly, I would say I question whether that's true today amongst Unitarians. I think Unitarian Universalism, at least, has gone off the rails a bit. But to answer the question, that's what the values are. They go way back to the beginning of this idea that we should follow the teachings of this man because they would add to human society and to individual life. And that was just Unitarianism to me is just another word for humanism in that respect. So let's see, we got maybe room for one more. Yes?
It was like a bunch of other dumb tourists who got off the bus in a town called Todd. And I knew nothing about the church I was about to walk into, just something that was on the tour list. But a rather significant document signed, which has a great bearing on the history of the Unitarian Church. Could you elaborate on?
Yeah, so you were visiting what is today Romania and Torda, and you saw where the Edict of Torda was signed in 1568.
But I began to realize the implications of where I was standing and what the document was about.
You didn't know at the time?
No, I wasn't going to well, I didn't hear the dumb tourists getting off the bus.
Right, okay, a dumb tourist who got off the bus and then later realized.
Oh, yeah.
So you didn't take a picture. You didn't take a picture.
In the first 20 minutes, I began to realize I was standing somewhere significant.
Yeah.
I won't talk about that.
Okay. Well, the Edict of Torda is really an incredible document, I think, both for its content and more interestingly because it was something that was established so early on, really prior to the Renaissance and to the Enlightenment, right? The Edict of Torda was signed by the king of the Hungarian king, or Hungarian prince, as they like to say in that part of the world, John Sigismund, in 1568. And that was largely because where the kingdom was situated was between the Sultan's reign and Austria, essentially. And so there's already been a place of warfare during the Crusades. And it just so happened that it was a very diverse community. So they had Muslims there, they had Jews there, they had Protestants, they had Catholics. And it was a place of tension between these two larger entities. And so I think largely because of his wisdom, but also because of his character, Sigismund, who was influenced by his mother, Queen Isabella, wanted to hold a meeting where all the religious leaders came and debated why their religion was best, and then he would choose what religion his kingdom would be. And wisely he chose Unitarianism because Unitarianism was the one that wanted to tolerate everyone else's religion, right? So I don't think it was so much that he listened to Ferenc David and said that the preacher, the Unitarian preacher, and said, "Oh, I'm convinced." I think it was more probably something that he realized he was going to do well in advance of the Diet of Torda. But whatever the case, he said we will be a Unitarian kingdom, and very shortly thereafter signed this historic document of religious tolerance that didn't allow anybody to be persecuted because of their religious beliefs, no ministers to be removed from their post because of their preaching. It was extraordinary. 4/15/68. I mean, it was because at that time, tolerance was seen as an evil, right? Tolerance has evolved over time to mean what it means to us today, but in those days it would be like saying, let's call for anarchy, right? Because the whole, I mean, it was just common sense, which is why you should never trust common sense. Common sense that if we all believe different things, we would fight each other and kill each other. To have peace, we have to make sure everybody's on the same page, right? So that was the thinking. And tolerance initially, once it was adopted, meant that well, we won't kill you. Right? It was sort of, it was not even live and let live. It was just let live. And so you had these communities that were terribly discriminatory against those who were not part of the dominant religion. They had to live in certain neighborhoods. They didn't have certain rights. They couldn't have churches in the cities. It was really discriminatory. Couldn't marry people of other faiths, that sort of thing. So all that evolved over time to where we think of it today as, hopefully we think of it today. Some people still don't clearly. But that, no, tolerance means that we get to openly disagree. By the way, tolerance doesn't mean that I can't say what people disagree with. It means I can say what people disagree with. And I still get to live next door to you. And I still get to drive on the same streets and work in the same places and go to the same schools. So now this was very short-lived. Unfortunately, Sigismund had a carriage accident and died 3 years later. The Catholics were given control of the city, and they created an anti-innovation law. Can you imagine this? Anti-innovation. That, well, everybody who was protected under the law, we'll let them alone, but there's no innovative thinking going on. And in fact, Ferenc David innovated on his thinking, and he was put in a dungeon and died 6 months later. So it was a very short-lived experiment that would not be something that really was expressed in societies again until the Enlightenment, right, a couple hundred years later. So the Unitarians were way ahead on the significance of tolerance. All right, so I think we're probably at our limit here. So great questions. Thank you all so much for your participation. And yeah, what do we do here? What are we doing? We're singing? We're going to sing. Yeah.